And here we are.
Yeah.
Welcome to Warrior Commission Now, where we live out our commission on a day-by-day basis with the Lord. So I'm Christine Caston, and
I'm Sharon Rudolph.
I will let her introduce herself. But we are just having a series of video chats over the course of our journey together, with time that we've spent building a friendship, working together through the Warrior Commission, also just in just the joy of talking about God. I mean, there's so many things to talk about. Just bring him up. So in the joy of all of that, we just felt like it was time to start having some of those conversations in this type of format. So maybe you can be encouraged. We hope that it will be a win to yourselves as the Lord continues to speak into your heart, and just be encouraged in this time. And today we're going to focus on unity, not conformity, in Jesus. We just finished talking about loving in diversity and loving diversity in our last video chat, but we're going to talk about now about the unity that we have, which isn't about conformity, but about unifying. And Psalm 139 is a good one to pull out to talk about the uniqueness of who we are. God created us in, and He knows our inner being. He knitted us together in our mother's womb. And He has pulled a unique design together with all the creative process of His heart into who we are. And I love that, because we unify in so many different areas. There are so many different ways to unify. And I think one of those is in the strengths that we have. So Sharon, would you maybe you can talk a little bit more about how we unify through our strengths and what that looks like in maybe a day-to-day or week-to-week?
Strength in the kingdom is a unique thing, because the world has a definition of strength. Mm-hmm. and it's about who wins. Mm-hmm. But in the kingdom, strength is much more about who you are internally, and the value by which you live your life. So being able to live from a code of honor brings a point of unity in people's lives, because that's the strength that really does last, whether you win or lose on the external, on the outside things. And so being able to have unity in our strengths and have unity in that code of honor in the kingdom. So it's simple. Jesus is Lord. That's a strength. That's a strength in our code. And He gets to be in charge. And so sometimes these other things, these external things, aren't that big a deal. And we can unify on the strength that we have with others, in who Jesus is for us on a daily basis. On a daily basis. So yes, it's about looking at the things that are important to God, the things that God considers strengths,
right,
as our points of unity.
Yes, that's so good, because when we are able to unify in God, we actually are moving past insecurities, territorialism, protection, self-protection, those kinds of things that are areas, maybe because of wounding or hurt. And what we're actually doing is we're stepping into that flow of who God is, who He says we are, what that looks like in our lives, how we stand in that. And there are, obviously we're wired with certain skill sets and talents and capabilities that God put in us for what it looks like to live out our commission. But our commission can't be lived out alone. It's not meant to be alone, because God is a relational God. And so therefore, it's not about the Lone Ranger, in your commission. It's about what God is doing to allow what you carry of Him in you, and what that looks like, fruit of the Spirit, wisdom, godly wisdom, things like that, to be able to be poured out in others in that time and in that space of whatever those connections look like.
Right.
But we also can gather through or unify through weaker areas that we have as well. And I'm not saying weakness, but or like I said, insecurities. I'm not talking about negative connections. I'm talking about the areas where I am not maybe as strong, maybe not, that's not my skill set. We can unify in those as well. And so in the process of your experience in what we see through the unity that we have in the Warrior Commission and other areas of your life, what would you say? How would you say that? What does that look like to unify, through our weaker areas as well?
One of the things that we do in the Warrior Commission is we partner together with others. It's not, like you said, it's not about the Lone Ranger, and it's not about my ministry. It's about, what does God want to do? What does he want to create? What does he have planned? And how do we step into that plan? How do we see what God's doing and step in to what he's doing? And I bring a certain history and training and knowledge into that conversation. But this other person will bring another skill set into the conversation. And we need both.
Right.
It's not just about my voice. It's about our voice, because God's not a single note. He's a symphony.
Right. I love that.
And then we bring in the symphony.
Yeah.
And just like when you listen to a really good piece of music, maybe in this section, the violins can be heard stronger. And in this section, the horns can be heard stronger. It doesn't mean when you can't hear the other, it's weak. It just means there's an ebb and a flow, and that God has a plan. And God wants the music to be beautiful. He knows best how it is in that. And so when we hold who we are and what God created us to do lightly, it creates space for God to weave us together with other people.
Yeah.
So we make the best music.
Right. And that's so good, because we're stronger together, know. And I think it's interesting to me, because some people consider transparency, vulnerability, those kinds of things that have to do actually with building true relationships as weaknesses. But they're actually, at least we consider them to be strengths, because what they do is they open up, and you're humble enough to say, I don't necessarily know this. This isn't something that I have developed experiences in or have ever been exposed to before. We see a lot of people stretching and growing into new things in our community, whether that's dreams that maybe they've laid down, or dreams that they're just not sure exactly how to fulfill in, as far as skills and things like that. And so there are people in our community who also have those strengths and those experiences and that knowledge. So when we come together and we share in those conversations, and we have the multiple conversations all the time ongoing throughout our community that are really pulling. In my weakness, we know that God comes in and makes us strong, but he also creates a unity through those areas of weaker strengths that other people can shore up. And so it's kind of like gears, gears that fit together and interlock, and it helps create a smooth process, and things turn together. And it's just a beautiful interchange and interaction between all the people involved with that, I think.
Yes. And I love that you brought in the transparency and the vulnerability. And one of the aspects of our community is that we choose to put those things into language that honors the person and honors God.
Right.
And that we are all in different levels of growth. And there may be something in life that makes it a challenge right now. But just like we've talked about in other chats, it's about learning to see that challenge from God's perspective.
Exactly. Yeah.
And what if it's not, and what if we're not being vulnerable to the challenge or the problem or the thing in us we haven't really quite been able to deal with yet?
Mhm.
What if we're being vulnerable to God's presence, power, solution that we
Mhm.
haven't seen before?
Exactly.
But if you don't bring that thing to the light,
Mhm.
you can't find God's solution.
Exactly. And he
And
may
so,
choose to release a solution through another person,
right.
And so I think that when we're talking about, unity, one of the things that I think is important to realize, like one of the last things Jesus talked about in John 17 is
Yeah.
about, let them be one as we are one.
Yeah.
And so Jesus is one of his final prayers, one of the final things on his heart was about the oneness that we have an invitation to step into. And I think so much of what hinders that has to do with pride, has to do with insecurities, and just has to do with a lack of confidence in knowing that it's okay to not know, and that you have permission.
Yes. We don't know
It sounds so
what we
simple
don't
when
know.
we say
Yeah,
it.
I know.
But we do. We have permission not to know, and just by saying, I don't know that. I don't know what that is. But what happens is it starts an exploration, and there were so many times in the process of mentoring ministry that I did, which was part of my preparation for stepping into the Warrior Commission, and what has happened here. But part of that was just being honest with the person that I was mentoring, right? So many people come into mentoring and are like, I should know everything, I am the mentor, kind of thing. That's like so totally the wrong direction to go. But I would just say, I don't really know that, but let's explore it together. And in the process of that journey, I learned something, first of all, but secondly, the other person saw what it was to be okay not to know everything, but also saw that together we could come to an understanding or a solution for whatever that situation or that question was about, and we both grow. So not only are you modeling, a journey together in relationship, you're also modeling what it is to have an ongoing lifestyle of learning. Love the learning is kind of a phrase that we've adopted in the Warrior Commission. And so I personally love the learning. And Sharon, I know you do.
Yes. Yes.
But do you have anything to add before we wrap up? We're kind of getting close on time,
Well, I love John 17. And the fact that Jesus prayed about our unity,
Mm-hmm.
it was the last thing, the most important thing on his mind. He wanted to make sure
Mm-hmm.
the disciples knew what was important to him
Mm-hmm.
before he went to the cross.
Right.
And it was our unity. And
Mm-hmm.
he asked his Father to make sure it happened.
Yes.
So it's here, it's available.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something we get to step into. It's like it's the Christmas present. So much of relationship with God is the Christmas present. If it sits under the tree, you don't get to enjoy it. You have to open it. You have to unwrap it. You have to play with it, practice with it,
Mm-hmm.
learn how to live with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so in Warrior Commission, we choose to be intentional, not just airy-fairy, focused, purposeful and focused in making choices towards unity,
Mm-hmm.
because it's so important to God.
Right.
And so we see what the Father's doing, we're going to jump in.
Exactly. And
see where it goes.
Exactly. And it's an adventure, but I think that, when we talk about the last aspect of not conformity in this, and just kind of, again, just to kind of bring that piece back in, unity comes through our strengths and our weaker areas, which means we're all going to be uniquely designed. And there are, if we are all cookie cutters of each other, then we're actually, we're missing out on what God actually had planned when he designed us uniquely,
right?
And had a specific purpose, and commission for each of us. But conformity is actually limiting it limits that, because it says that you can't operate fully in your strengths, and you can't admit to the areas that you are not as strong in. And so,
Right.
so it's a very dangerous thing, and actually, it actually degrades unity. There actually can't be unity
Yes.
in conformity, because true unity comes through heartfelt connection and relationship
Right.
with each other,
Right.
where each person is valued and has a voice
Yes.
and is celebrated.
Yes.
So, well, we are time to wrap up. We are at time again.
Yes.
It goes so fast. I
Yes, it does.
love these conversations with you, Sharon. And so thank you for joining us on this latest video chat. We are so grateful that you're here, and we hope that you're encouraged. And we hope that through these conversations that you are able to live your warrior commission now, day to day, and every moment of your life. So you guys have a great one and a blessed day. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.